So I'm staying at a hotel down the road, just out there in this beautiful city. And I said to my hotel concierge, I'd like to go for a run. What's the run that people do here in Auckland? And he said, well, I don't really know, but I've been told that if you go to the Nike store, they've got all sorts of run maps that they'll just give you for free. Now, there's a lot to not like about Nike. I mean, the treatment of workers and what have you. But I've got to say, this story is really something because this is a shot of the building we're in, by the way, gorgeous. And here's the guys at the Nike store. They had a full colour piece of paper that they just printed off their printer for me when I said what distance I wanted to run. They said, oh, 5K, because I'm not a big runner. 5K, yep, no problem. Here's a 5K run that we think is great. And here's a 10K if you really want to stretch yourself. Now, I wasn't wearing anything Nike. I was dressed for a run, but I wasn't wearing anything Nike. And they treated me like I was part of this warm family of runners. What did this campaign cost Nike? About 10 cents in printing. And now 300 people are hearing about it. And this photograph is from Instagram, where I shared it with about 2,000 people via the web. The amplification of messaging is such a huge part of the world in which we now live. You'll see over the course of our conversation today, 3 themes emerge. The first is the power of small. The second is the barriers are collapsing. And the third is the wisdom is in the group. This photograph from just down the road in Auckland shows how a very large organisation, I don't like to normally use case studies from large multinationals because most people aren't from large multinationals, and they say normally, oh, well, yes, well, when I have a $50 million advertising budget, I'll come and talk to you about that case study. But I love this because it's a 10-cent case study. The barriers are collapsing. Nike is big, but acting small. They're being community-based. They're relying on the power of small. They're letting the barriers collapse between them and their customers. But it didn't have a logo on it. They didn't act like a big company. The wisdom was in the group. I asked the people around me, where do I go for a run? And they were able to network me. And with the web, there are so many more people that we're now connected to, aren't there? In fact, these photographs were all taken on Instagram. And whenever I go to a new city, I look for this. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is the story of 2 paths. The first path is the path the government wants you to take. And the second path is the people's path, the one that we actually want to use. This is a great case study in user-centered design. One of the great themes of our time is actually, instead of trying to impose on people plans or designs or experiences that they don't want, it's basically observe how are people behaving. Find out what people want and give them that. If the local government in this instance had just planted grass everywhere, they would see where people would want to walk and they could then put the paths in those places. User-centered design. And I think what's really encouraging is that whilst I did go for quite a decent jog around Auckland, I haven't seen this yet. I'm not saying it doesn't exist anywhere. Oh, by the way, speaking of Instagram, did you see how much Instagram sold for a few months ago? It was, do you know the figure? Does anyone know the figure? $1 billion. The business had existed for less than 2 years, and they just sold out to Facebook. In fact, I was talking to some entrepreneurs I was in Austin, Texas for the South by Southwest conference, which is really a conference of people like us. Entrepreneurs and innovators, people that are looking to share ideas and identify opportunities. And I was talking to a guy on the line for a food cart so I could get a taco. And he had a company called Roximity. And Roximity is a business in America. And what happens is it's all about proximity based on mobile phones. And the idea is when someone walks past your retail outlet, your mobile phone gets a text message because Roximity have signed a contract with all the mobile phone carriers in the US. You don't require an app. You just get a text because you've basically given the carrier permission to send you targeted advertising. And the reason that they got that opportunity was because a few years ago, they did a 911 project for the telcos and they had established that relationship. Before that, they sold mobile phone ringtones. And what's interesting is each of the 3 businesses, so the most recent one, Roximity, about location-based advertising. The second one, assisting emergency services with 911 and text messaging. And then the initial one, which was mobile phone ringtones. Each of those business models, they entered and exited in less than 2 years. Well, actually, they haven't exited Roximity yet. But the point is that business models are shrinking. How many of us are planning our businesses for exit over the next 2 years when we start to draw up the business plan? The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And so as we think about the businesses that we're creating, the products and services that we're designing to serve our customers, thinking about timeframes, thinking about how, well, time is an accordion and it won't be 2 years for everyone, but businesses are starting to become irrelevant in 2 years, and entrepreneurs are going in knowing that that's the case and being okay with it because they believe they can capitalize in the meantime. Instagram, $1 billion, 2 years well spent. Jared Diamond wrote a book called Collapse, How Civilizations Survive or Fail. I don't know if you've read the book, but chapter 8 is about the Easter Island community. And the story is really one of a firm hierarchy being established. The civilization got so sophisticated that there were certain people in Easter Island that were in charge and they didn't have to ever leave their little part of the island. Not a bad life if you could get it. But unfortunately, they were making decisions without access to all of the available information. And crucially for Easter Island, forestry, a very important resource because it was used in construction, it was used in cooking, it was used in boat building. Forestry was taking place at an unsustainable rate. Now, I don't know what the conversations were like on the island, on Easter Island, but what we do know is that the civilization ultimately, as Jared tells the story so beautifully, collapsed. The reason, or the lesson that Jared says that is for us, is that we need to find ways of, even if hierarchies feel like the most efficient way to organise business, making sure those of us that are in a senior position, are at the top of the pyramid, are finding ways to listen to all of those around us. Those of us who have access to information that we ought to have access to make properly informed decisions. I mentioned that futurists ask 2 questions. And in a way, we all need to be futurists. The first is, what's going on out there? The second is, what are the possibilities? Working in strategy, you've probably seen something like this before. When you do corporate strategy, you sometimes get to go to a golf course or some kind of retreat. And those of us at the top of the pyramid get to have a few days off, and we wear polo shirts because we're all very relaxed. And we basically have a conversation about how the world's changing and what the opportunities are, and we set the strategic direction for our organisation. And a few days later, we return back to the troops to let them know the future and how we're going to seize the opportunities. Sound familiar? Well, what we're starting to see is organisations mature and learn the tough lesson of Easter Island. And that is that the wisdom is in the group, that all of us have perspectives that are worth harnessing. In fact, one of the things that my organisation is doing a fair bit of is this, collaborative brainstorming. This is a listed company in Australia that's generating hundreds of millions of dollars in profit every year. This is 350 staff, every person that works for this property company. It didn't matter if they'd been there 10 days or 10 years, if they were the CEO or frontline staff. They were all flown to the Hunter Valley in New South Wales, wine country, to spend 2 days having a conversation about what's going on out there and what are the possibilities. And so later on today, when we have a workshop, we're going to be benefiting from this kind of a process. In fact, I was recently invited to go to the Waikato District Council. So you know the Waikato District, right? So the bastion of innovation that is Waikato District Council. Well, they are dynamos. They have one person, Jo Ireland, who's in a role where she is there to spur on innovation. And she said, we're going to find someone to get us all thinking differently. And so what we did with Waikato is, oh, by the way, before I play the video, I just want to tell you that the way that they'd arranged the tables is that half the room had their backs to me when they walked in, right? So they all sat down with their backs to me. And do you know what? As I started to talk, none of them turned around. So thank you for all facing me. Like, I mean, this is really, I really appreciate your warmth. And there were guys in high-vis clothing, the bright orange vests and bright orange polo shirts and what have you. And I don't think they'd ever set foot in a building before. And they were certainly, their arms folded. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, this will be interesting. And I'll show you the video. This is them about half an hour into the process. I went around with my iPhone. It's brilliant footage. I mean, this is really professional stuff. But the point is that they're all leaning in, they're all contributing, they're all having conversations about the future of the district. And the conversation from the participants in processes like this is that, first of all, they had no idea how energizing it would be to talk to people that work in their organization. They didn't have that, they had a newfound respect for the people that they work with. That they were excited and energized by the ideas and the possibilities in the organization. And so I'm really excited about the fact that we get the opportunity to have that kind of a process this afternoon. This footage was shot between August and October last year. It's from the International Space Station. And it was shot by an astronaut who didn't seek permission before taking a camera and just shooting. This is the camera, by the way. It's not a really high-end professional camera. It's just a digital camera with time-lapse setting. And he's shot this gorgeous footage where we have this amazing vision of this global civilization. 7 billion of us. Some of us fortunate enough to have access to clean drinking water. Some of us fortunate enough to be able to connect with so many other people, to learn from so many other people from other parts of the world. Every dream that's ever been dreamt, every vision that's ever been realized has happened on this blue marble. What the futurist Buckminster Fuller calls Spaceship Earth. At the end of his book Collapse, Jared Diamond says that now that we're a global civilization, we can't afford to let hierarchies and those at the top of the hierarchy make decisions for the rest of us. The stakes are too high. In the past, we've seen all sorts of civilizations collapse, but there have been others to go on. But now we're part of a global civilization, the stakes are that much higher. We need learning organisations. We need people with vision, with a sense of purpose, with a big yes, with a why that drives them so far that when the whys are big enough, the hows take care of themselves. And that's what today's conversation is really all about. You know, I've got an appetite for awesome. Do you have an appetite for awesome? Yeah, you bet you do. Here's some awesome stuff that I've seen recently. This is the center of Manhattan. This is New York City. It's famous for traffic jams, the Times Square. They've put deck chairs in the center of Times Square. This was a 3-month trial that was ordered by Mayor Bloomberg, and it's been so successful, retail sales are up 60% in the region. They've taken cars out, people have come in, they've got the city built around people. Something is shifting. This is Stanford University's lecturer who specialises in cars that drive themselves. You probably know by now that Google has a car that has driven across continental USA by itself. And this screenshot is taken from a Stanford University program where you can build a car that drives itself if only you participate in this program. And guess what? Stanford University charged for this program. Absolutely nothing. It's a free program that 60,000 people chose to participate online for free. People like my dad, who had no formal education beyond high school, were able to attend Stanford University and collaborate with people that they would never meet in real life to learn how to build a self-driving car. Now, why would Stanford University do that, this prestigious university? Well, partially because they know that it's by showing just how clever and brilliant and clear communicating their lecturers are that they will have an even broader pool of people that will feed into their other programs. The world is getting more awesome as cool stuff gets cheaper. Like dance lessons. Have you ever seen this guy? This is Little Demon. You'd have to say he's one of the world's best 6-year-old breakdancers. I love his moves. Now this video is pretty poor quality, right? It's just shot in his living room. But the story it tells, Chris Anderson from TED.com, and you've all been to that website, right? Because that's where all these fantastic ideas can come from, So Chris Anderson basically points out that he calls this crowd-accelerated innovation. You see, the idea is that whether it's breakdancing or cooking, you can learn so much from complete strangers via the web. You see, innovation anywhere is becoming innovation everywhere. So what I'd like you to do is turn to the person next to you and share one example of something that you've learned from a complete stranger via the web. I'll give you 30 seconds each.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Okay, it's time to be a listener if you've been a talker. Switch over. I mentioned there are a few terms that are, for wordworms, you're going to love this. Cyborg, the edge, and abundance. These are 3 terms I'd like to introduce you to. And then I also have 3 signals in the noise. 3 trends that I think are specifically relevant to entrepreneurs like us. So, cyborgs, the edge, and abundance. Cyborg is something that I think is really exciting, and it's affecting the way so many of the people that we sell to, that we work with, that we connect with, that we visit at Christmas are behaving, that we need to understand the term, the implications, and consider the opportunities for our businesses. But before we get onto that, I need to know a little more about you. In fact, I'd like to find the most digital person in the room, because we're about to talk about technology. So is it you? Is it you? I don't know who the most digital person in the room is. Have you ever done a stand-up quiz? Yeah, you have. Great. So stand up. Everyone's going to stand up. Don't worry, you'll be sitting in just a moment. So here's how it works. I'm going to put a statement up here on the screen. And if you can, hand on heart, swear that this is you, I would like you to remain standing. And if it's not you, look, we're a supportive audience, right? It's like family, right? And so we're going to be completely non-judgmental. But this is an opportunity for you to see real-life statistics. If you're a number nut, you're going to love this, because it's real-life statistics on how the world has become digital and how digital your colleagues or your peers are today. The first of all, I have broadband internet at home. Really? You all have broadband internet. I'm impressed. Okay, so let's see how we go. See if we can thin the ranks a little bit. I have read the news online. No, just ever. I have researched a purchase online. I've used a smartphone. It's not a Mexican standoff, everyone. So a smartphone could be an iPhone, a BlackBerry, it could be a Nokia. I've sent an email on the go. Okay. I've banked using my phone. I note the sniggering. Banked. I've tweeted for customer service. Ah, there we go. Twitter started to thin the ranks. There you go. You made it. Look how many people have tweeted for customer service. How many of us are responding to tweets for customer service? How many of us are engaged with customers online? Look at this pop quiz around the room. This isn't people on Twitter. This is people that have specifically gone out and sought a question, made a complaint, whinged about something, celebrated something. Tell me all about it. Who's got a good news customer service story from Twitter? Anyone? Bad news story worth sharing? Okay, here's one I prepared earlier. The other day, I was sitting with a client and he was telling me that a major telco, who will remain nameless, was basically stiffing him around. He was moving house and they told him he could no longer keep his email address. And it just so happened this telco had a 24-hour Twitter account. And so we were sitting at breakfast at 7 a.m. and I tweeted at the telco and said, can you believe this? Your 10-year customer, moving house, wants to keep working with you, but you won't let him keep his email address. Within 5 minutes, they wrote back and said, here's the link, get him to put his details in, and within about 15 minutes, it was all solved. All resolved over breakfast. It made me look like a rock star because I'd solved this thing that he wasn't ready to, that he didn't think was possible. And it happened at 7 in the morning. The world is really changing, isn't it? I've used the internet to find a date. Congratulations, guys. No, stay standing. This is a very digital room, isn't it? Now, I don't know, when I first said, let's find out how digital the room is, I don't know what preconceptions you had about your table and how digital they were, but sometimes when I'm talking with clients, they say, oh, look, well, we could be on the web or, like in a more meaningful way, and our digital strategy could go deeper, but we're not really trying to appeal to Gen Y or anyone under 25, so it's not really relevant. But how long did it take until I could get some of you to sit down? Yeah, we're all geeks now. So, I've used the internet to find a date. Let's see if I can separate you somehow. This one, I broke up with my internet date using Twitter. Give them a round of applause. Is that even half true? Really? What's the story? You broke up with your internet date using Twitter? Ah! She was a good sport, wasn't she? Well done. So cyborgs, we're all part person, part machine. This idea of cyborgs, you've heard the word before. It means that you're part human, part machine. You might think of a cyborg as someone with a mechanical arm or mechanical legs. But the fact is that when it comes to mobile devices, as you saw from the statistics in this room, from this sample, anecdotally at least, what we're seeing is that people are part person, part machine when it comes to mobile phones. And the phones might not be attached to us, but we've become attached to them. 2012 megatrend diagram. There are 3 trends I'd like to talk to you about around technology. The first is web search. The second is social media. And the third is mobile devices. Now, in isolation, I know you know all about these trends. I've already seen statistically who I'm talking to. So let's skip right ahead and talk about what happens at the intersection of each of these trends. At the intersection of web search and social media, you've got learning from others. And already in the conversations, I saw you light up when you talked about how you learned how to cook a roast or fix your car or whatever it was using a complete stranger's help. At the intersection of social media and mobile devices, we've got support on the go. And at the intersection of web search and mobile devices, you've got instant answers. A bit of my work involves working with doctors on the future of health. And over the last 10 years, what doctors are telling me, and I bet this may even reflect your own experience, is that patients are asking fewer and fewer questions when they walk out of, when they're basically given a diagnosis. And I personally don't think it's because people are taking less and less interest in their health. It's because rightly or wrongly, people believe that they can look up the results themselves online and become a kitchen table expert in a few minutes on whatever it is that the doctors told them they have. In fact, sometimes doctors are being bypassed completely. Rightly or wrongly, at the intersection of all of these trends, we have people, all of us, believing we are informed and supported 24/7. This isn't a problem for the future of health. This is not a challenge or an opportunity exclusively for the medical profession. This is an opportunity for all of us. If we're selling to cyborgs, people who are learning from others, who are getting support on the go and are looking for instant answers, are we delivering? I mentioned yesterday, I spent a fair bit of time, a few hours, going over, visiting 100 different websites for each of the organisations that I knew were represented in the room today. How many of you cringed? That's normal. But as we're selling to Cyborgs, the opportunities, for example, with Facebook, Twitter, those things that we used to kind of, dismiss out of hand, it's starting to become relevant. Even if we don't think directly, people are going to be really caring what we're saying on Twitter. It's how we're treating our customers who are on Twitter that shows up in Google search results and influences Cyborgs' opinions about how engaged we are or otherwise. In fact, when you have the culmination of these three trends, what you arrive at is a point where the technology upgrades can't occur quickly enough. Your contract with your mobile phone provider might be a 24-month contract, but most people want to upgrade their mobile phones because the mobile phones become part of our identity. Check out this. This is a conversation between people and a mobile.
We have a flat tire.
How do I tie a bow tie again?
What's the fastest way to Hartford Hospital?
Do I need an umbrella in New York this weekend?
Remind me to call Chris when I get home.
Move my meeting from 3 to 4.
What does a weasel look like?
Remind me to get milk when I leave work.
Tell my wife I'm gonna make it.
Wake me up at 6.
Play some Coltrane.
I'm locked out.
I found 3 locksmiths fairly close to you.
Say hello to the most amazing iPhone yet.
At some point in our lifetime, people's definition of connection has changed forever. It used to be that, yes, high tech was important, but high touch is also important. I believe that will remain true. However, what we're seeing is people are actually finding themselves more comfortable with screens than they are face-to-face. Cyborgs. So the second term is the edge, fostering yours and encouraging others. This really simple diagram shifted the way I saw innovation, strategy, and change within organisations. It's a diagram by John Hagel, who's from the Centre for the Edge at Deloitte in San Francisco. You can draw this on the back of a napkin to explain to your colleagues how it is that they are going to shift an organisation towards their vision. So what you do is you draw a circle, and at the centre you write the word core, or you do a couple of X's to describe people who are at the core of your organisation. Now you know the people at the core of your organisation, right? These are the people who love systems and the status quo. They love the idea of maintaining the administrative systems, and they really don't like policy shifts. And they're not really warm to change either. I don't know, this may be you, but I doubt it. You're probably a bit closer to the edge. You're what that famous Apple ad describes as the crazy ones, the people, the misfits, the round pegs in square holes. Now for you, you see not just the world as it is, but you see the world as it could be. You see possibilities. Or it may be you know someone in your organisation who sees the world differently, or just basically keeps an eye on the future just naturally, instinctively. I was talking to the CEO of a New Zealand company that's got about 600 staff. And we had a presentation we had a conversation about innovation in a room similar to this. And afterwards I was sitting in his office and I said to him, look, that stuff about the edge, because what I encourage people to do is if you have someone, if you're lucky enough to have a team, if you've got an established organisation, you're lucky enough to have a team, I'd encourage you to basically say, Barry, look, I just wanted you to know that the way that you think about our business and the way that you have a really good lock on how the world's changing, I understand that your ideas are really important to our organisation, but in meetings you're not always appreciated. And so what I wanted to do is say that based on this diagram, you're at the edge of our organisation. And the only way we're going to change and move forward is if we basically foster our edge, because the edge is where the great ideas are going to come from. And you will help inspire people to move across towards that future and shift the whole organisation. And maybe some of the dead wood will drop off, but that's how change happens sometimes. But I'm realising that we're not talking enough. Once a month, I'd like you and me to grab a coffee. It's my shout, we'll go for half an hour, and you just tell me whatever's on your mind about what the opportunities are for our business. That's an innovation program. That's called fostering your edge. That's called looking after people who have exciting visions for your organisation, who will do the thinking overnight when they're reading their iPads, over the weekends as they're going to dinner parties and listening. If you have someone who's at the edge of your organisation that you can rely on for advice, tell them that. It's worth a $10,000 bonus in their pay packet to be told that they're valued, that they're relevant to the tribe, that they're making a difference. So I said to the CEO of this organisation, 600 staff, how many people are at the edge of your organisation and what are you doing to foster them? And he thought about it for a moment. And he looked at me and he said, you know, we've got 3. 600 people. And he could think of 3 people that he considered at the edge of his organisation. And then he looked down and he said, and they've all left. The problem is, if you don't foster your edge will go elsewhere. The people who are driven to see the world differently will go to where they're appreciated. If you're lucky enough to have them, or if it's you, then you need to look after yourself and give yourself the space and the time to foster that vision for the organisation. As it becomes clearer and more compelling, you'll find that the call will eventually come with you, but you need safety in numbers. So make sure that those conversations about the future are happening, not just with your edge, but your whole organisation.